Do you believe in alternate universes?
You are listening to Delayed Replay.
The improvised movie review podcast. Wink.
Everything is fine here. We're all fine. Just sit tight and listen to them talk about the movies they definitely saw.
Don't delay. We have to listen right away.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay. I'm your host, JMnJR, and this time we are talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife. You know, I was trying to figure out who to have as a guest host on this episode. I thought to myself, who am I going to call? Joey Bays. How are you, dude?
You know, that was excellent. I've been waiting for people to throw my name into the Ghostbusters theme song, and who better to do it than JMnJR? So I appreciate that. That is excellent, and I thank you so much for having me on. You know, I've gotten to talk about Ghostbusters a lot recently, and when you said, hey, let's talk about Afterlife, I definitely wanted to participate.
Yeah, and like you answered the call, you know?
I did.
Had to throw that in there too. But
it's all Ghostbusters. It's all good.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about this, how like guest host, like if you cram those two words together, it looks like ghost, you know? So,
you're right, it does.
Spooky.
Portmanteau or whatever the proper wording is.
Yeah, a portmanteau. Yeah, I think you're right. But yeah, you were recently on IPC's Ghostbusters episodes, which I'll link in the show notes. And like you were on their first one and the voicemail on the second one, and you were back for like the Ghostbusters 2016 discussion, right?
Yeah, I was with them to talk about the original from 1984, and then I was unfortunately unavailable to discuss 1989's Ghostbusters 2. I did send in a short voicemail just for them to interlace so I could get my thoughts on it, and then they asked me back to talk about the reboot from 2016, Ghostbusters Answer the Call, and it was a great time talking with Zach, Ben, and Jake, two of which I know have been on your show before.
Yeah, and like I think it was in the chat, because like these things get broadcasted on channel 1138 on Mixler, just like this show. I think like during the chat for the second one, I pretty much like just hijacked the chat and it was like, "Hey Joey, we should talk about Ghostbusters Afterlife." So like,
yeah, it's funny. It's the only one that I was a live recording for 1 and 3, but number 2, I managed to sneak into the chat while I was away for the weekend, and I couldn't listen, so I was just chatting whatever I could think of for Ghostbusters 2, and you were there, and we were just kind of chatting about it, and then you were like, "Hey, you should come on Delayed Replay. We should talk about Afterlife." So here we are.
Yeah, and Afterlife came out like a month ago, but like still really wanted to talk about it, and like with IPC talking about the others, I'm pretty much just riding on their coattails, really.
It's a good convergence to things happening at the same time, but it made sense. I've been begging the IPC guys to talk about Ghostbusters, and with Afterlife just happening, it was the best time for them to do it. So now it's a good time to talk about the most recent entry.
Yeah, so before we go into like what we thought of Afterlife, I guess we should go into our personal experiences with the franchise overall. So like, what are your experiences with like the Ghostbusters franchise?
Completely 100% been with me as long as I can remember. So, I'm an 80s kid. I grew up watching the Ghostbusters animated series, The Real Ghostbusters. That's really what got me linked into the franchise. And then I believe, I can't confirm 100%, but I believe I saw Ghostbusters 2 in the theater. I would have been 4 to 5 years old. I hadn't seen the original movie until I was older, but it was just something that was always in my life and in my friends and the neighbors' lives. And it's just something that stuck with me since then. So I've had, 30 plus years in the Ghostbusters universe. Things have come and gone, but I've always been interested in it. And it just seems that this third movie in the original canon has always been out there and sizzling And finally, it was brought to the front burner, and they were able to get it done with Afterlife. They had kind of a little diversion a few years ago with a reboot of sorts. But, I enjoy all of the movies, all of the TV shows they've done, Extreme Ghostbusters as well. And the video game, it's a pretty broad and diverse set of, intellectual property, because there's a huge comic series and I buy and collect all that as well. So it's pretty much, if it's Ghostbusters related, I'm on it. I'm interested in it. And it's something that I don't see changing anytime soon. It's kind of the biggest property in my life.
Yeah, I was looking at clips and gameplay and cutscenes of that video game from 2009, which is pretty much like a Ghostbusters 3. It takes place in 1991. It's probably more fun to play it than to just watch it. But I could kind of see how it could work as like a third movie if it had been made back in the day. They would just need to add in character moments in between the action stuff here and there, like more, I guess, quiet scenes. Like the cadet that you play as doesn't really talk at all, does he?
The rookie. Yeah, no, he doesn't say anything.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of weird. But yeah, it does feel like some of it matches the aesthetic of the first two films. And it takes a while for it to add some newer things, I think. Like that spider lady, which was kind of cool. But overall, it seemed interesting. So where do the comics fit, in the canon, if at all? I'm curious.
So it's interesting because it's hard to focus on canonicity, if that's even a word, with the Ghostbusters. It's very similar to how Star Wars used to operate, where there was the G level canon with what George considered canon, and then the expanded universe. And there may have even been more than two levels. I think there could have been 3, but Ghostbusters operates kind of more on that way than the way Disney has rebranded Star Wars, where everything it should be aligned. The original 2 movies take precedent over everything. I don't know exactly where Ghost Corps would say the reboot fits. I think they're trying to make it kind of a parallel dimension type thing, that this is part of Ghostbusters, but it doesn't fit into the original timeline. The video game is supposed to be, like you mentioned, basically the third movie. That's what it was assumed for so long. But then with Afterlife coming up, we kind of saw that wasn't true. The comics play more like, comics. They take some liberties with things. They incorporate not only the main movie universe, they bring in the reboot universe. They actually bring in stuff from both cartoons in The Real Ghostbusters and Extreme Ghostbusters, and they kind of merge all the multiverses together. So there's no real specific or strict canon. It's kind of the movies are one thing, the cartoons are another, the comics are another, and they can all interact, but the main grouping is always going to be the original movies.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a fluid sort of canon system. And I mean, in the Real Ghostbusters show, it's supposed to be in a world where they are more real than the first 2 movies. They mentioned the actors and the movies, right?
Yeah, so there's an episode in The Real Ghostbusters where they are called in as consultants on the movie Ghostbusters, the 1984 version. They actually show clips from the 1984 the actual live action Ghostbusters movie in the cartoon, and they make a whole bunch of jokes at their expense. One of my favorite is when, I believe it's Real Ghostbusters animated version, Winston says Venkman, Ramis, and Aykroyd, Ramis, and Murray. Yeah, it's the character, or the actor's names, and he says it sounds like a law firm. They really play it up, that they try to make it sound like they are the real Ghostbusters. And of course, that's the real part of that was related more to that Filmation had a TV show called Ghostbusters, and they couldn't use Ghostbusters on their own. So the real part of it comes from the licensing issue with the other Ghostbusters show that was on at the time, but they kind of make it that they are the real Ghostbusters. The cartoon is what's happening, and this movie is based on them.
So theoretically, if this is a universe where like they have the Ghostbusters movie, then like Zombieland could be in the same universe as like real Ghostbusters. It's like Bill Murray is in that movie and they like mention the Ghostbusters movie, right?
Yeah, and it's actually, believe it or not, it's actually, people talk about the movie from the 90s, Casper, being a Ghostbusters movie or in the Ghostbusters universe, because Dan Aykroyd shows up in full Ghostbusters apparel wearing his race dance flight suit saying, who are you going to call? And he says someone else and runs away from the house that Casper is haunting. So
yeah, the 1995 Casper movie. That was a funny cameo. Like, it did make me question like whether Casper could like fit into the Ghostbusters movie canon. And it's like, I mean, sure, why not, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, I think he would be a great fit. What an incredible crossover opportunity. Maybe they'll take that up for the Afterlife sequel, because that's certainly going to be something that's going to happen. But Casper, I think, would be a perfect addition. You know, you got Slimer in the originals and Stay Puft, especially the way that they're portrayed in the cartoon universe. Casper would fit seamlessly in either a cartoon or live action version of Ghostbusters. I think that's something that they should definitely work towards. Ghostbusters lent their hand to the Casper movie universe. It's time to Casper to cross over into the Ghostbusters universe.
That'd be cool. Like, my personal experiences with Ghostbusters is kind of limited. Like, I feel like I might have seen the first movie or two as a kid. I know my brother probably did. I don't know. I feel like there was a point where I thought like the Ghostbusters logo and the Pillsbury Doughboy were like the same thing because of like the Stay Puft, that whole thing.
Yeah.
I know for sure I decided to like give them like a full watch like sometime in the early 2010s, I think. So it would have been like high school or after. And I remember thinking back then like that the first two movies, like just thinking, they're okay, I guess. But when I watched them again more recently, I liked them more than I did back then. It's kind of weird. Like, I guess I enjoy them a bit more as an adult, like the humor in them. And it reminded me of like the way I compare the first two is kind of like how I compare the first two Neverending Stories, which I also watched recently. The first one in both series, they pop more with like the music and the visuals, but in the second installments I prefer how the main characters are, how they've grown and matured a bit, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. I think that's a great way to link them together. It works really well. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I know plenty of casual Ghostbusters fans and very diehard Ghostbusters fans that will say very similar things. There's plenty of people that say they prefer the second one to the first for a variety of reasons. Now, some of it is nostalgia related. Some are like me, that maybe that was the first one they got to see in the theaters, or that's the one they grew up watching. And then there's others that just enjoy the slightly lighter tone that the second one carries, or maybe the organization they feel is done a little better with the villain working his way throughout the whole thing. But I think both of them are really strong and good movies. And you mentioned this. The humor when you're younger, you don't quite get the comedy aspect of them, especially the first one. It's definitely aimed at an older, more mature audience. And if you watch it when you're younger, and I believe the original Ghostbusters was PG, because I don't even think PG-13 existed in 1984. Right. So, it wasn't over the top, at least for the most part, but it was just the illusions and the language. Younger kids just aren't going to get it. And that the movie still grabs a hold of younger people is, I feel like, is a positive thing for the movie, a testament to the rest of the writing and the stuff that they come up with the graphics and the special effects and the equipment and the iconography. All that stuff stands out and people latch onto it. And then as you get older, then the jokes land better, and you're like, wow, this movie, maybe it does really have a lot going for it.
Yeah, and I also watched the 2016 film more recently. I actually watched it on like mid-afternoon, August 10th, and I realized like the next day that the next day, August 11th, was Chris Hemsworth's birthday, but like in Australia, as I was watching the film, it was already August 11th, so I guess you could say I technically watched Ghostbusters 2016 on Chris Hemsworth's birthday, so that's kind of funny.
Now, if you're going to celebrate Chris Hemsworth's birthday, I think Ghostbusters Answer the Call is definitely the way to do that.
Right. Get that cabin in the woods garbage out of here.
And don't watch anything related to Thor, Marvel. You don't want any of that. You want to go Answer the Call. I mean, I think he was pretty funny in Answer the Call. So I don't think that's a jab at him in any way. I think his character of Kevin is pretty funny.
Yeah, I think how I score the movie is similar to how you scored it on IPC. I think it was like a 6.5 out of 10, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I believe it was a 6.5. Yeah, that's definitely the lowest I would give it, because there's days and parts that I watched that I'm like, this is better than that. But overall, it just isn't quite on the same level as the first two. So I had to drop it down a little bit. I think 6.5 is where I ended up.
Yeah, so like I ended up thinking, the movie's okay. It's not in the same tier as the first two movies, which are probably 8 point something for me, but it's not a complete abomination. And like, if like someone came up to me and we were gonna watch a movie and they're like, hey, you want to watch Ghostbusters 2016? Like, I don't think I'd be like super opposed. It's not like one of those movies where I'm like, really, this thing that derailed the franchise or whatever other people might say,
No, I'm right there with you. And I said this on the IPC episode, I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel. Like, I enjoyed their premise and their version enough that I would go see those four ladies come back and reprise their roles. Bring Kevin back, do whatever you want and do your version of the Zool story, as they teased at the end of it. And really saying I would spend money to go see another version or a second in the series, I think is, decent enough praise for it. And I also like when it's just randomly on television, when I'm scrolling through cable and don't really have anything I'm ready to watch. And if I scroll there and Ghostbusters 2016 is on, I stop and watch it. So, it is what it is. Is it amazing? No, but do I enjoy it and find parts of it funny? Yes, absolutely.
I guess I also kind of like the color palette of it, but that's, I don't know, like the way the ghosts looked didn't really bother me, but I don't know, like it's fine, I guess.
That was one of the things that, especially initially when the trailers came out for it, 4+ years ago now, that really stood out to me because it seemed to me, it was just very vibrant or oversaturated, and it looked too fake for me. And I know talking about ghosts it's tough to call something fake and something real, but it just didn't have the same sense of realism as I thought some of the aspects of the original did. But I love the designs of the ghosts. I think the Times Square scene where everything kind of flashes back in time and all these ghosts come out, I think it's really, really, it's a really fun scene and really well done. I kind of wish they would have turned the vibrance down or changed the color palette a bit, but they went with that, and that's one of the directions that they chose a bit differently.
I also agree that the cameos felt kind of weird. Like, if you have the guys back, why not try to make it the same timeline? But I mean, we're kind of derailing the discussion a bit.
Well, but I mean, you're exactly right. That was one of my points. And I know doing a cameo in 1 or 2 days isn't the same thing as asking for them to be there for, 2 or 3 months or whatever it would be. But if they're all willing to do it, they all have to have some form of interest. So you would think they would want to, do something bigger and better. And that's what led to Afterlife. Yeah.
So like overall, I think 2016 is okay. It's not like the Child's Play remake where I'm like, oh, this is an insult to the original series, especially since they did it without the creator who's still doing his own Child's Play stuff, like in these other movies and the show. But I digress. I also noticed in Ghostbusters 2, there was that woman who predicted the world would end on like Valentine's Day 2016. I think it would have been funny if the 2016 movie came out like around then, or if they set it on that day.
Yeah, was it 2016? I kept thinking that was 2014. Maybe it was 2016. I get those dates confused in my head, but I know that the year that it came up, I of course made a huge Ghostbusters post on Valentine's Day because I was just telling everyone, "Hey, end of the world's happening today. I hope you're ready."
Yeah, it was 2016, and weirdly enough, Valentine's Day 2016 is like the last time I was like feeling the Valentine's Day spirit, like sending online cards to friends and whatnot. But since then, not so much.
Well, maybe that's what she was alluding to in the movie. Then was the end of the kinship, the friendship that you had held so dear. It just was shattered on Valentine's Day 2016.
Yeah, I won't get into all that, but
yeah, I don't want to dig into your personal life here. It's just
yeah, I mean, I'm making it sound worse than it actually is, but yeah. So yeah, Ghostbusters Afterlife. I guess we'll like get into that now. It opens with these kids, Trevor and Phoebe and their mom, Callie. They're in this new house and they're like discovering like all these things that relate to Spangler, and it's like all this Ghostbusters related stuff. And like you have like these little parts of the score here and there where it's like a callback to the Ghostbusters theme, which I thought was pretty effective. Like it wasn't too over the top right away. It was just like, you know, a little subtle callback, you know?
Yeah, they had the piano trill or whatever it is when the voiceover is talking there at the end and they're alluding to things. I thought it was well done. It wasn't quite what I expected when I was anticipating the first trailer, but after watching it dozens of times, it really sat well with me. I really enjoyed it. It made me look forward to the release of the movie. And that's all I really want from a trailer. I don't think it dived into story that much, or, we didn't get to see the original crew. We get to hear voiceover from Bill Murray, but there's enough allusions in there that you definitely know that, hey, this may be a new generation, but we're going to get a lot of the old cast. And the Spangler stuff, there were rumors about that for a long time, and then the trailer obviously really, really fired those up super, super high, because in that trailer you just see McKenna Grace's character. She is full on doing her best Egon impression, from her tousled hair to the glasses, which are just spot on Egon from the first two films.
I thought it was kind of weird that Trevor is played by one of the kids from Stranger Things, and they did like their whole Ghostbusters homage. So like, I guess that was like his little audition tape in a sense. But did it ever break the immersion for you, that like seeing him in that and then seeing him in this?
Yeah, I know that Finn Wolfhard kind of became a household name with Stranger Things, and I know a lot of people, when he was cast in this, were concerned that this was going to be just a modern version of Stranger Things doing more of a Ghostbusters shtick. But the best thing for me is I have not gotten through all of Stranger Things, so I haven't become supremely attached to Finn Wolfhard as just being a Stranger Things entity. He, to me, is known for that, obviously, because I've seen enough of it to link him with that. But now I know him from actually being a Ghostbuster in Afterlife. And I love the casting. I believe Jason Reitman has gone on record and said that they had some, trepidation in casting him because they weren't sure that people were going to be okay with him taking on that role after what he was doing in Stranger Things. But he blew them away, and I'm an advocate for, I want the best person to get the role. Like, I don't care what they're associated with. I don't care about any of the things you want to label them. If they're best person for that role, or the best actor for that role, they deserve to get it, no matter the baggage that some people might think they bring with them.
Yeah, I think for like the first 10 minutes of the movie, like the Stranger Things connection was like in the back of my mind, but I got used to how he was playing Trevor in this, and I feel like he looks different enough here to, I guess, not see them as the same character. So I think he found his footing in this movie. Yeah,
I think he did a good job. But I think maybe the best part of this, for the people that were a little taken aback by the casting is you don't have to worry it, because while his character Trevor, is in there a lot, the main focus is Phoebe, is McKenna Grace. Like, she is the one that they lean heavily on to bring this Ghostbusters movie into the next generation. Them being siblings is great and all, but I think Phoebe outshined Trevor.
They definitely have good interplay, but I feel like Phoebe has some of the best lines in this. And I love how, like, she has this catchphrase, like, instead of saying sounds good, she'll say sounds goof, which...
but that's, I mean, it's perfect. It works so well with her character, and it's just something that you could see, they rely heavily on her relationship or her direct grandparentage of a Spengler, and they go hard into the science look, and maybe a bit stereotypically at times, but you can just imagine someone with that look and that pedigree saying sounds goof. And they play right into it. It's great. She gets it in a couple times. It always makes sense. And, hey, maybe we'll start seeing action figures where you pull a string or hit a button and McKenna Grace says, sounds goof.
Oh, gosh. Toy Story, Ghostbusters crossover when?
I'm all for that. You get Buzz Lightyear with a proton pack. I think that sounds amazing.
Yeah, like make a Toy Story short where like he meets the Ghostbusters as toys,
I did enjoy when Phoebe and Trevor when they get the Ecto out, which it was fun to see the original Ecto back, and the fact that they finally confirmed, which a lot of Ghostbusters fans have wondering, was there always two cars? Because in the original there was the Ecto 1. And then in the sequel in 1989, we get the Ecto 1A. And people have always wondered, well, is that just the original car that they souped up and made better? Or did they cast off the original and get a second? And we find out that they did cast off the original and got a second one in the sequel movie in 89. But we see that original one come back here, and you can see that the Ghostbusters, including both Ray and Egon over the years, have been tinkering with it and changing it. That's where you get the pop-out seat, the gunner seat that comes out, and it's the whole reason behind the huge drama that surrounded the discussions of, oh my gosh, the roof rack is not exactly accurate, and the ladder is on the wrong side. Like, we find out all in this, there's two Ghostbusters Ectos. The 1A was used for a while, but the one was sitting somewhere, and here it is. We get to see it. It's awesome to see the original back. It's not in great shape, but I did love the nod to the 80s, just a little bit more linked to the past, where they just casually mention the flux capacitor that was added to the Ecto. I very much appreciated that. It's just in passing that they don't focus on it or anything like that. But it was fun little nod to a fellow 80s franchise.
Yeah, and it's especially funny because we have Paul Rudd in this, and his line in Endgame, Back to the Future is BS. Yeah,
it's perfect.
I was glad to see him in this too. I'd say I'm a pretty big Paul Rudd fan, I guess. Like, if I hear that he's in something, I'm like, oh, he'll probably be great in it. The only exception, I think, is like when he played Mike on Friends. Like, I feel like he wasn't like given as much funny stuff to do as he could have. Like, he's not as funny on Friends as he is in like all this other stuff he's been in. So it's like, when I rewatched Friends last year, I was like, Paul Rudd, you could be doing so much more. I know you can do better than this.
Yeah, it's funny. That was the first time that I had seen him in anything, and he's in those last seasons as Phoebe's love interest and eventual husband, and we get the incredible episode where he calls himself Banana Hammock, and there's a lot of opportunities for him to show his comedic range, but they kind of don't allow it to grow as much as you would hope after you see him in everything else that he does. But I'm just like you. Anytime you say Paul Rudd's in a movie, I'm like, oh, it's going to be good. Like, or at least I'll like his character, because I can't think of a movie where I didn't like his role, whether it's big or small. And this movie was no exception. Paul Rudd absolutely kills it. It was just great for everything to come full circle, because years ago, when one of the many GB3, the third movie in the series was talked about, Paul Rudd was in consideration to be a Ghostbuster that, they Ghostbuster in training. And, guess what? He picks up a proton pack, and we get to see Paul Rudd be a quasi Ghostbuster. So
his name in this movie he's Mr. Gooberson in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is the second time I've seen him play a teacher. He played a teacher in The Perks of Being a Wallflower. So that one wasn't a comedic role. It was more of a kind of a mentor dude with some words of wisdom kind of role, but he was good in that too. I don't know. I just have to mention this real quick. We've been going on the tangents with friends, and that's also the name of your podcast.
Absolutely.
And also you can't have friends without a Joey, so that's pretty fitting.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that come full circle, and the stuff that I like. Tangents, going off on tangents, is one of the things I'm known for, and loving Friends. And I named my show Tangents with Friends because I wanted to have my friends come on, and I wanted to take a tangent away from sports, because that's the main podcast that I did was about sports. But I didn't want to talk about, geeky, nerdy things like television and movies on my sports show. So I was like, well, I'm going to take Tangents with Friends. And that's what I do with all of my podcasts, and everything that I end up being on is just usually forcing tangents upon everyone.
Should also do a spin-off called Tangents with Joey.
Tangents with Joey. As long as my first guest is Joey, I'm okay with that.
But yeah, I do love Mr. Gruberson's enthusiasm when looking at the equipment, and it did kind of remind me of Stranger Things as well, how there's that teacher who's telling them all the scientific stuff. But I don't know, it feels like Mr. Gruberson fits in a bit more with the whole Ghostbusters vibe. I don't know, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, he's the introduction to some of our characters with the exposition surrounding him being the teacher. He's kind of a link in there to help push the story along, and he's got to fill in the minds of McKenna Grace and Logan Kim, her classmate, that this stuff happened. She brings the ghost trap in, and he gets to tell everyone, including the audience, what happened 30 years ago, because no one knows anything about it. It's like in the Star Wars universe, we're just a few years past, and no one knows about the Jedi anymore. Here, no one knows about the Ghostbusters anymore, even though, they had a 60-foot Marshmallow Man, or whatever the dimensions are. That's probably way too small, but no one knew anything about the Marshmallow Man 30 years later. Really? Come on. I mean, you have a giant advertisement walking down your street. You think people would remember it, especially since it's basically forced the Ghostbusters to go out of business, but apparently not. So you get Mr. Gruberson in there, who's kind of like a super fan. He's got all the clippings and the archive footage, and it's really one of his fantasies to meet the Ghostbusters, and here he is teaching a family member of one of the originals. So it's funny to see him go all super fan when he finds out who Phoebe is. And yeah, but Mr. Gruberson was fun. He was a great character, and I look forward to seeing him in whatever they do next.
Yeah, I also love the little scene where he's at his home and he's watching that late 80s movie that was a ripoff of E.T. called Mac and Me. Because
yeah.
Because if you've ever watched Conan, whenever Paul Rudd is on there, he loves to show that clip from Mac and Me instead of a clip from what he's actually on there to talk about, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite parts of the movie is when they cut to Mr. Gruberson in his home. It's toward the beginning middle area where he's working out, doing some jumping jacks, and we finally get the association with part of the first movie when you start to hear the growls of a terror dog. And that leads us to some dramatic moments with Mr. Gruberson being chased just like Rick Moranis' character was in the original. And unfortunately for Paul Rudd, he suffered the same fate. So.
Right, yeah, that dog was snarling and whatnot. How did that whole encounter, the way that played out, how do you think that was executed?
it was fun that they did it the same way they did in the original with all practical effects. Very little use of CGI other than some touch-ups here and there. To have someone working a mechanical version of the Terror Dog, breaking through Mr. Gruberson's front window while he's working out, and then chasing him. He tries to get away, and instead of running to Tavern on the Green, he's caught in his his 86 Cadillac or whatever he drives around. And of course, like in any good movie fashion, it doesn't start up properly. And all of a sudden the Terror Dog is on the front of his car, on the hood of his car. And it's nice because they leave it up to the imagination of what happens next. You don't actually actively see him become possessed, which is the same way that happened in the first one, with Sigourney Weaver's character of Dana Barrett. The arms come out of the couch and she gets pulled into a room, and that's it. And then next thing you know, she's been possessed and eventually becomes Terror Dog herself. And it was fun to see that work the same way here with Mr. Gruberson, where you're in the car with him, and next thing you know, he's walking around with red eyes, asking people if they're Mudball. So
I was not prepared to see a possessed Paul Rudd, but the kids figure it out, and like they try to get some help. Like they go off of the knowledge he had passed on to them about like the original Ghostbusters, so they like go out and try to look for them. And also going back to the 30 years thing, that does remind me of like Star Wars as well. There's like the 30-year gap between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, and all of a sudden Luke Skywalker is a myth. And I also like that the 30 years can be rounded, so it's like, oh, maybe that video game stuff in 91 could still have happened. Like, I don't think there's anything that directly contradicts it here.
Yeah, they don't make too many references to the stuff from the video game, specifically the possessions and the ghosts and the demons. It was nice to see them though use the addition of the different weaponry that is added to the pack throughout the game. Like, you can see that there were those options added on the new proton stream and the different type of slime dispensers, the boson dart, like things like that. They're casually mentioned and shown in the progression of the proton pack over the years. So, I mean, the video game wasn't completely cast aside, but they kind of pick and choose from it what they want. And I think picking stuff on the proton pack is a great way to do that. It doesn't mean that those entities didn't exist that they fought in the video game. It kind of leaves it open to interpretation, to your imagination, of whether or not everything that happened in 1991 actually happened here in this movie. So I think it was a great way to do it, because it leaves it open to the fan and the viewer to determine if that's the case. And the great thing is, for people that have no idea what the video game is, it doesn't matter. It didn't impact the film one way or the other.
Right. Like, they keep it accessible for anyone who hasn't played the game, but there are these little references here and there for those with like eagle eyes or whatever the expression is.
Well, no, exactly. They're basically Easter eggs, since they don't dwell on it, and people hear the term or see the updated proton pack in the basement of the old farmhouse there out on the prairie. It's great. It really was really great.
Right. And, with like a harvest festival coming up, they're like worried about like all the people who are going to be around and what could happen. So like they're really scrambling to find the old Ghostbusters. So do like a deep internet search, like it's like this little montage type of thing at the library, which I appreciated it. Like, go to your local library, do some reading, whatnot. And it's also a nice callback to that library scene in the first movie, I guess. And they find Venkman's place, and they manage to like break in because like he doesn't answer. And like when they go in, it's dark, and they turn on the lights, and then all of a sudden you see like this ghastly image of Venkman, like he looks like a ghost. But then there's this curtain, and they look behind him, and he's just like using a projector type of thing, like Wizard of Oz. So Like, I thought that was pretty funny. Like, did it surprise you at all? Like, were you fooled right away?
Yeah, I was. I thought it was well done, and it's funny because for so many years, Bill Murray said he was only going to do another Ghostbusters movie if he was a ghost. So at first, I was like, "Oh my, did they do it?" Like, I feel like it's a little too much because with Harold Ramis not being around to reprise his role of Egon Spengler, it would be kind of much to lose Peter Venkman and have him be a ghost in this film, and then exactly the curtain moves, like literally, and things change. But I mean, that's a great scene because I was a little surprised that they went with Bill Murray's Venkman to be the first one introduced to us. They talk about Spengler so much because of the relationship with our main characters here, and my impression or my expectations were that Ray, Dan Aykroyd would be the first one you see, like they would have to call him or something like that because he's the heart of the Ghostbusters. He's the guy. This has always been his thing. But they go instead with, the heavy hitter, with the cleanup guy, Bill Murray. And that was a great allusion to make it seem like he had passed on and was joining us as maybe something that they would hunt down. But it was great. And then just that, off-screen surprise where you hear the voice of Dana Barrett, Sigourney Weaver, coming from the room, and you realize that, yep, it's finally happened. Peter and Dana are together. So it only took 30 years for us to see it.
Yeah, because like in the first movie, Venkman does the Han Solo thing of being super annoying until the woman like falls for him or whatever. Because Han Solo is not very, like, he's not very James Bond like the way Indiana Jones is, and it's like Leia isn't like so easily taken with him, and he's like constantly pestering her, and then eventually they become a thing, which is kind of weird, but it happens. And then in like Ghostbusters 2, like Dana has her son, but like she and Venkman like catch up and they go on this little date, but now here it's like, hey, they're finally together. It's finally a thing.
Yeah, it's exactly. And after she makes her appearance and in her nightgown, and Peter's just like, it's not what it looks like, and the kids are just like, what are you talking about? And then he's like, no, it's exactly what it looks like. And it's just a little nod to the audience here that, hey, finally, yes, this has been happening. The end of Ghostbusters 2, things worked out, and now they've been together for 3 decades. So it's great to have that payoff, because we thought we were going to get it in 1989, and well, they went a completely different direction. But by the end, you think they're together. But the first one, you kind of think that, oh, they're together, right? And then, nope, they just throw that to the side in the second one. But here, finally, in the third one, yes, it has happened. So it was a great moment.
Yeah, they don't really specify like what year they got together before this. So like I feel like the video game where he's hitting on that other woman could still have happened, and then they could have gotten together after that. But right. I think the lack of specificity benefits like the fans who want more things to fit together,
Yes, absolutely.
Venkman is like still his like sarcastic self, which is entertaining to see, and like Dana is like, she like gives him a lecture about how he shouldn't be like playing with the projector trying to scare the kids or whatever. So it's like this bickering back and forth type of thing. Feels very real and very entertaining. And after watching Osmosis Jones recently, like just seeing how stiff of a character he plays in that, and how like not very good of a performance that is, like it was great seeing that he's like very playing Venkman very lively here. Like it feels like the same character, and he's not just phoning it in,
Yeah, I think it really hit him hard when Harold Ramis passed in 2014, and they didn't get to ever do this third movie all together. And I think Bill regrets some of his actions or the distance that he put between the two of them over the years as a result of a falling out on the sets or in relationship with other movies. So I think this kind of made him realize I probably should have done things better or got together sooner, and I think this was very important to him. So I think he definitely did his best related to the first movies rather than the clunky cameo appearance in the 2016 version. This definitely felt like true, pure Venkman once again.
Does this little monologue about how like Egon Spengler was like a good friend to him, and it feels like he's being both Venkman and Bill Murray in that moment, like saying nice things about his co-star, which was very touching to hear, even if it does kind of break the fourth wall. And I mean, he kind of does break the fourth wall here and there in Ghostbusters 2, so it doesn't feel out of place to me.
No, yeah, I think it worked really well, and you're right, it does. It's both Bill Murray, Peter Venkman talking about Egon Spengler / Harold Ramis, and it was nice to have him in the conversation with all of the original Ghostbusters talking to Phoebe, Trevor, and Callie. I couldn't remember the name of Carrie Coon's character there for a second. Yeah, just to kind of have them all have that moment where they're all together, filling in the gaps in the history surrounding Phoebe and Trevor's grandfather. It's I know people going into it were a little bit wondering, was Carrie Coon's character Callie, was she going to be the daughter of Egon Spengler? And then we find out no, she is the daughter-in-law of Egon. That Annie Potts and Egon were the ones that got together and had the son, and it was actually Egon's son that married Callie, and that's where Phoebe and Trevor come from, and that's a relationship. Because you could see the family resemblance in Phoebe and Trevor, but we weren't sure where Callie fit into the equation, and you find out the tragic story surrounding Egon Spengler and his son.
They pretty much lost their grandfather and father in like the same boating accident like all those years earlier, which was sad to hear about, but Callie does have some really good lines about them as well, saying what great people they were. And, it just makes everything feel connected and like, the relationships feel very authentic, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, we see in the trailer that drilling platform that they're on. So you think that a lot of the action is going to stem from that, and the main part of it does, but the flashbacks all taking place on a lake, and you think that it's just father and son having a good time fishing, but as we move through the movie, we find out they weren't just there for a leisure activity. It was in relationship to a paranormal study that ends up going wrong, and unfortunately we tragically lose both of them, and it's just it hits home. It really hit home, both in the real life with not having Harold Ramis around, but the way they were able to work the edit so that you didn't necessarily need him there was kind of an amazing feat of editing and cinematography.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So yeah, after Venkman and Dana are like caught up on this, I always feel like I have to say his last name instead of like his first name, Peter. Peter. Like their characters are like that. Like I think Venkman or Bill Murray before I think Peter.
Right. No, I'm with you.
And this is kind of a tangent, but like as a kid, I watched Space Jam over and over on the VHS tape, and like in that movie, Bill Murray plays himself. But like as a kid, I didn't realize he was playing himself, like playing an actor. I thought he was just some guy who was desperate to play basketball, but it turns out he's playing Bill Murray, who is desperate to play basketball in the NBA. And yeah, and you have that joke toward the end that went over my head as a kid, where like he shows up at the basketball game and the alien's boss is like, whoa, nobody told me Dan Aykroyd was in this picture, and it's like completely wrong actor.
Yes, excellent. I love it. So perfect.
That's probably the third time I've mentioned Space Jam on this podcast. It's just unavoidable.
Well, it just relates to so many things.
Yeah. So yeah, they're caught up on all the new ghost activities that are going on. And so first they go and find Ray and catch him up, and then they find Winston. And what'd you think of like their portrayals and like this now updated like iteration? Like how much have they changed? How much has stayed the same?
So I think, Ray is Ray. I mean, like, we talk about like kind of Bill Murray and Peter Venkman feel like they could be the same character. I always thought that about Ray and Dan. Like Dan is Ray, Ray is Dan, because Dan is very much into spiritualism and the other side, and that's and I feel like he would be the heart of any project, and that's exactly who Ray Stantz is, and he stays true to form. That's him. He's always positive and upbeat and looking on the bright side of things. So he's very excited to get the gang together. But it is great that he kind of is a little melancholy, or he sees the bittersweet moments of getting to interact with a former Ghostbusters family here in the moment. But in the end, everything works out. I do like kind of the deep cut that they do where we find out that Winston is the mayor of a small town. I just think it's really cool that that's the way they went, because there was a book written about 16 or so years ago where Winston becomes the mayor of New York City. And it's just, he's not the mayor of New York City here, but he is the mayor back in his hometown. And I think that's cool that that's where they find him. They get to have the talk with the mayor. You got to see that in every film. We got to talk with the mayor. And in this instance, it's Ernie Hudson's Winston Zeddemore, who's the mayor. But they just are going to say, hey, we got to get together and go help Egon's family. And he, of course, heeds that call. It's a cool thing. And that book, there's not a lot of ties to that book. Not too many people know about it. Not many people have read it. But to have them pull that aspect out of it, I thought was very, very cool.
What was the title of the book? Like, do you remember?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I have it here. It's very, trying to think what Ghostbusters. I know it was written by Shali Fish. I'm trying to remember what the tagline was. I think it's The Return. Ghostbusters The Return.
Okay.
Yeah, Ghostbusters The Return by Shali Fish. It was published in 2004. It was only available for a short time because I believe it was the last book published by that publisher. I believe they went out of business shortly thereafter, so they never had additional printings. So it's a very rare book that I'm glad I bought as soon as it came out. It's worth a decent amount of money for a book. And it was a fun read. And like Winston becoming mayor at the end is a little bit of a twist that you don't quite see coming, but it's cool that they included that little nod in Afterlife.
Yeah, I'm like looking at this page about it right now. It came out 2004 to commemorate the 20th anniversary of Ghostbusters. That's pretty cool.
Yep, very cool.
Yeah, the title makes me think of Twin Peaks: The Return, which is like there's absolutely nothing like Twin Peaks: The Return. It's weird. So yeah, they catch Ray and Winston up on everything that's going on, and they decide to get into the jumpsuits again, and they talk about how uncomfortable the suits feel because it's like been a while.
Yeah, and they can't zip them up all the way, and there's holes, and it's just it's super fun. But that they are the ones that you see in the trailer that Phoebe kind of brushes aside when she's first noticing all the equipment that's in the basement of that old farmhouse. It's a good thing she had those so that they could use them here in the final act.
Yeah, Winston says that like getting back in this suit feels kind of like a step back for him because like he as mayor he dresses very nicely, and Ray is like, why have we never update these suits, like make new ones? And Venkman is like, because these suits are what the people want. And like he's talking to the audience right then and there.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Chewie we're home moment. This is what people want. And I mean, he's not wrong. I want to see the flight suits. We get to see the logo. We get to see the ecto. We get to see the proton packs and the trap. Like, we get to see that iconography that it just goes hand in hand with Ghostbusters. And yeah, it's kind of, breaking the fourth wall or alluding to things, but it's as close to a Chewie We're Home moment as we got, and I loved it.
So he says, now let's go to the Harvest Festival before it becomes a Harvest Festival. because
Yeah.
harvesting souls or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, it's using aspects of the old Shandor Mining Company fields was probably not in their best interest, but that's you can't blame for the local nonprofit running their harvest festival on whatever grounds are available. But yeah, it is a nice little back and forth between the way this is setting up, it's not that harvest festival, it's a much worse type of harvesting.
Right. And I did love the ghost designs at this event. Like, there was one of them that looked like a really freaky scarecrow type of thing, which fits the aesthetic, I guess. Were there any other ghost designs that really jumped out at you in this sequence?
Well, I like throughout the use of Chomper, the ghost that they first see when they're testing their equipment, and I like that he is able to escape until here at the end, because he's just kind of this movie's version of Slimer. They've got the similar builds, close in color scheme, and the names, Chomper, Slimer. It's just it's a good way for them to associate with the original imagery of the first two. And then the decisions here to just kind of create their own thing outside of that. Like, we don't get Slimer, we don't get Stay Puft, they're not releasing any of the old guys, we don't get anything about Vigo. We get name drops of these, but we don't see them. So we get something completely new that we haven't seen before, that reminds me more along the lines of kind of like the devil. It's probably the best way I could describe what you're seeing. But they go big again, and that's all related to the pits that are being disturbed, and he's underground and causing the earthquakes in a place that has no fault line, like Mr. Gruberson says. And we find out, well, that's because there's this giant devil-like ghost stirring things up underground. And of course, we find out then that this is the spirit of Ivo Shandor, who his name is familiar in the first movie, and talks about his relationship to the building at Central Park West and the Terror Dogs. And it kind of reminded me that at least portions of the head remind me of the Terror Dog shape that we get to see in this movie as well.
Yeah, I really love the colors, like the reds and the greens. It's just magnificent, like how it's all put together. And of course, they're trying to get Gruberson to be his normal self again. So he has like this inner struggle, which is kind of intense, but also kind of comedic in the way he and the ghost within are like talking to themselves. So I don't know, like, did that work at all?
Well, I mean, it was a little rough, and it might have been a little bit too on the nose, and it really made me think of Ant-Man and the Wasp, because it kind of like pseudo gets, possessed by Pym's wife in that, she's trying to direct where they need to go to find her in what is it, the void, type thing, the slipstream that they create from shrinking so much. So it was just kind of weird to see them go in that direction with his character again. And I don't know that they needed to throw some comedy into that part of it with him being possessed. I don't know that we needed the inner monologue side. That didn't quite land with me. I understand what they were trying to do, but it wasn't one of my favorite aspects.
Yeah, that's fair. I do like the way that they confront everything. Like, it does feel... Well, here's the thing. Like, as far as, like, Trevor and Phoebe go, that nothing terrible is going to happen to them because, they're kids or minors or whatever. But, like, you don't really go into a Ghostbusters movie thinking that, like, oh, there's going to be a major death or whatever. Like, I kind of wonder, like, if there's anyone out there who's ever gone into a Ghostbusters movie not knowing what it is and expecting it to be scary,
Yeah, it's a different type of scary. I mean, it's not really jump scares you, and it's not full horror. It's just every so often they want to get you in some way, which I think they did a much better job in the first one than anything recently. They've relied more on comedic or tension rather than all out scares or jump scares or anything like that. But yeah, there's never going to be, just like Star Wars is intended for kids, Ghostbusters is intended for kids too, and it's especially gotten that way after the first movie. And, when you have child or teen leads, you're not going to expect to lose them. You're going to keep things pretty grounded. So I don't think you would go into this expecting anyone to die. it wouldn't be written into the script, is I guess what you'd expect.
Right. So they're fighting the ghosts, and I feel like the texture of the slime in this movie is more reminiscent to like Slime Time Live from Nickelodeon. I don't know if you've ever seen Slime Time Live, but that was a thing.
Like almost more puffy. Like it's not as like sticky or slime. It's almost more like a foamish kind of consistency rather than like a honey or anything like that. It was a little bit more. It wasn't translucent. It was kind of more opaque. But I think it was interesting to see them go this direction with the coloring, since we did pink before, we did black in the video game, and now this time we get a blue. So I did appreciate that, them kind of running the gamut and introducing different colors of the ectoplasmic residue.
Right. Like, we don't really get green like on Slime Time Live, but the texture definitely reminds me of that show. By the way, did you ever see Danny Phantom? That was like a Nickelodeon show about like ghost hunting.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh yeah, it was this animated show, and I kind of wonder if there's a Ghostbusters influence on that, because like, you know, his parents have the jumpsuits and like these like, I guess canisters, or I think they call it a thermos, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a influence on that. But yeah, it was a pretty good cartoon.
I don't know, I'll have to check it out.
Anyway, so yeah, we get this climactic battle. Everyone's like running and screaming, and like, I just realized that like in the Ghostbusters video game, what it was missing was like people running and screaming in the streets as stuff was happening. Like, it was like there were only cars in the street, which is kind of
right. Yeah, those NPCs running about. It was just kind of eerie and empty all the time.
So it feels realistic in that sense, having all these people screaming. But yeah, Trevor and Phoebe also like aren't always sure what to do, but then they get like words of encouragement from all like the old Ghostbusters, and they talk about how like back in the day they never knew like if they were gonna make it, but they did it because it was their job, it was their priority, it was like their calling. Vegman is like, when you have a calling, who are you gonna call? Ghostbusters. And then you get like the classic Ghostbusters theme song playing in this like very victorious, triumphant sequence where they're just taking down the ghosts, and it felt very effective to me.
Right, and I did enjoy the song coming back, and I enjoyed the cameo of Ray Parker Jr. making it into the movie this time as the customer in the shop. That was really great. I definitely enjoyed his appearance, and then the song coming back was absolutely wonderful because everyone knows that song. It's a classic.
Yeah, I mean, once you hear that song, it's hard to get it out of your head. I remember hearing it in like, it was randomly inserted at the end of the Simpsons episode I watched as a kid, and it was like such an earworm, you know, that song. Like, it just stays in there.
Oh, for sure.
I forget the name of this like devil-looking ghost thing, but he's feeling very irritated and like yelling and whatnot, like as he's being defeated. But it's like a really satisfying moment, like seeing him get taken down and then seeing Gruberson like regain his identity, and then he like goes up to the Ghostbusters as like, can I try? And they like let him use the equipment on the ghost. So
yeah, they call him Mephisto, actually.
Yeah, so yeah, I thought that was like a really funny fanboy type of moment. Like, you would go to like the heroes that you look up to and be like, hey, can I play? Or like something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you get that in Ghostbusters 2 with one of the artists, one of the singers has the cameo, similar to the Ray Parker Jr. one here, where he asks if his kid brother can have a proton pack. So this is kind of taking that the next step, where you have the kid wanting to take part, to be interested, and to be connected and just see certain stuff that's interesting to them, and they want to be included.
Yeah, so once they're rid of the ghosts, like all the people who are like still there, like have stopped screaming, and they like applaud the Ghostbusters. And it's just this really, I keep saying triumphant, but I don't know like what other word to use really. It's just this very satisfying bow that you tie on the top of the present or whatever, where it's like, yeah, the Ghostbusters came back, they did this thing, and they're as strong as before, if not stronger.
Yeah, it's fun. They've emerged victorious, and they're walking through the charred remains of the Harvest Festival, and people are excited to see them. You know, and the local government officials are there, and you know, how do we thank you and everything? And Peter Venkman's like, don't worry, we'll send you the bill. And it's just, you know, he's just always thinking of how to cash a check. But it is fun. They end all the movies on that kind of upper note with the chanting of the name, and it's fun to see everyone focused on the real heroes. You know, of course, Phoebe and Trevor. So it's great to have them all together, and for the ending shot to be them with their mom, and just kind of the wink and nod to this is the Spanglers, and they're here to stay.
Also, during that "we'll send you the bill" moment, I couldn't help but think of it as like, "we'll send you the Bill Murray," you know?
That works too.
Yeah. So we get this epilogue scene where like Trevor and Phoebe are like taking notes, like as like the older Ghostbusters are like teaching them about like ghost mythology and whatnot. So it's like they're kind of training because like they're interested in it as a career path, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, Gruberson is taking notes as well, and he has more notes than the kids do. He's just like really into it. Like his pencil has gotten super short to a point where it's just the eraser and the tip. Just how into it he is. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's great because you know he wants to be a Ghostbuster, and he's basically saying that he's going to train to be one. And we got to see him use or wear a proton pack in this film, but it wasn't part of the climatic scene. It was just, hey, look at this cool stuff that's at my family's house, and he just happens to check it out with them, because with him being part of the end battle on the wrong side of things, he didn't get to participate. You know, he got to be a Ghostbuster, but not he didn't get the full experience. He didn't actually get to bust a ghost because he technically kind of was one when it matters. So now he's like, hey, I need to write it down as much as I can because I want to be the guy taking care of business in the next one.
Yeah, watch him get possessed again in the next.
Yeah, he won't get that opportunity.
Hawkeye in the Avengers.
Or we get introduced that he has passed, and he's the ghost they're busting in the first one. It's just like, I missed my opportunity.
I think it's Phoebe who asks this. She asks Ray if there are any friendly ghosts, and he was like, well, I met one, but that might be a story for another time. And so I think that's like a little reference to like his cameo in Casper. So yeah. I mean, if they ever do a crossover, like that little line is there.
Certainly, absolutely. I think they should go for it.
Yeah. Well, we get the credits, and it has like the Ghostbusters theme again. But what'd you think of the post-credit scene?
They have to link it to the future. You want to leave it open-ended, because as much as they wanted this to maybe bring a conclusion to the original cast, they want to leave it open to continue the story for the future. So I think the way that they did it is intriguing, with really focusing on the character played by Logan Kim and who his family or who his relationship really are, and his past and who he's linked to. It doesn't appear that it's going to be anything we know about, but they make allusions with some symbols that Logan Kim's story is not over. We're going to find out more in the sequel. And I don't think it's one of those where Logan Kim is a bad guy, but I think that he has some connections to some shady parts of history that could rear its head in the sequel.
Right, yeah. Logan Kim was like Phoebe's classmate. I can't remember the name of this character. But...
Yeah, it's escaping me this entire time. I can't put my finger on it, but it was fun because, he has just a small role in this, but they clearly want to keep the relationship that him and McKenna Grace established in this. They worked really well together, and I think maybe focusing it on him and his family in the next one, it might be the right way to go, and that's what the direction that it looks like they're taking.
Yeah, it's like you have these like little appearances by other characters here and there, and it's like you can explore more of them in the next one, because like, you know, this one was about focusing on like the Spanglers and like their reintroduction to the original characters. So now there's like room to explore more of the characters of the updated setting. So that could be interesting.
Absolutely.
There was also one cameo appearance that I really loved, which was when, you know, after the Harvest Festival, there's like these news broadcasts, like flipping through channels, people talking about the Ghostbusters. And you see Jack Black playing this dude on the street with a guitar. And he's like, I came up with a song in honor of them. And he starts playing and he's singing, when you're walking down the street and you see a little ghost, what you gonna do about Ghostbusters? Like,
yeah, that's great. I like little Be Kind rewind.
Yeah. I got a really good chuckle out of that moment, because like I feel like lots of people forget about that movie, Be Kind rewind, but like, you know, where they're trying to like redo Ghostbusters on like a super low, like no budget,
budget, yeah.
But yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah, very, very well done. So I was disappointed we didn't get Rick Moranis, you know, and I was hoping for a bigger role from Annie Potts, but she really didn't make that big of an appearance. You know, it was nice to have her back, but it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't as in depth as some of the other returners had. But yeah, the absence of Rick Moranis was a disappointment.
Yeah, Janine had some snarky remarks here and there, which is like classic Janine, but she could have done more, so hopefully they'll have her do more in the next one. And yeah, it'd be great to have Rick Moranis back for the next one as well. I think he retired or something from acting for a while.
He did, yeah, for a long time, and he's just now starting to come back into the fray. He was on Disney Plus's Prop Culture talking about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and he's coming back for that sequel or reboot or whatever it is. I guess it's a reboot.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I've heard it's titled Shrunk, which
yes, yeah,
makes me think of Shrek whenever I hear it. So I don't know if they're trying to cash in on that DreamWorks money, which would be weird. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully he comes back. But I was glad to have like all the returning people that we did get in this one. So I guess with that, we can go into final thoughts and score out of 10. So what are your final thoughts and score out of 10?
This movie, I feel like it hit almost all the right notes. I think we talked a little bit maybe about some of the humor was pushed a little bit with Gruberson's character at some points, but everything else I thought was well done. I thought there were some surprises, some twists. They diverted expectations in a good way, and I feel like they had the right balance of the returning main characters. Sure, I would have liked to have more from Annie Potts as Janine, but I think the way they incorporated, introduced, and seamlessly merged the likes of Ernie Hudson, Bill Murray, and Dan Aykroyd's characters into the main story at the right time, at the right pace, worked really well. I enjoyed the new characters. I think Finn Wolfhard did his best to differentiate his character of Trevor from Stranger Things. And I think McKenna Grace as the main lead and the heroine was done really well. And I think she is prepared to carry the torch of the Spengler name into the future. I think Jason Reitman did his family proud, and he brought out an incredible Ghostbusters film in the footsteps of his father's first two, and I very much look forward to what the future holds. Ghostbusters Afterlife 2 can't come soon enough. I'm gonna go with do you like decimals, or are you not a decimal person? I can keep it whole if you want.
Oh yeah, definitely do decimals.
You like decimals? Okay,
yeah.
Then I'm gonna go with an 8.8 out of 10. I think it was there were a little bit of things that I think just don't quite make it a 9 for me, but I very much enjoyed it. So it's a high 8, and I think 8.8 sounds good. So that's where I'm going to go.
All right, nice. I think for me, it's a solid 8 out of 10. Again, like, I'm not as big of a Ghostbusters fan. Like, I did enjoy the other films, but like not to the extent of like other people really love them, you know? So I don't have like as much of a reverence, but I also like really liked what Afterlife did, how it put new life in this, like, I guess this side of the Ghostbusters canon, you know, that original timeline. I thought it did a decent job. And you know, like you said, since it's not that specific configuration of all the original cast together, like, you know, we have a couple people missing. It's kind of tough to recapture some of that magic. You know, that was like the main draw. But I do think bringing a couple new characters, like, you know, Phoebe and Trevor and Gruberson, like, they added something new, even if it wasn't exactly like the older ones. But again, you want like newer stuff and not just the same old things. But yeah, I think the original actors did a great job reprising their roles, like the ones that we got. And you know, maybe next one could one up this one. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think they started a nice base, a nice foundation to continue the franchise onward if everyone is into that. So I think it was a solid sequel and a good start for the future.
Ghostbusters after Afterlife.
Right. Life after Afterlife.
Sony, give us money.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks again for being on this, Joey. Where can people find your stuff?
So you can find everything I do on JMnJR Radio.com. You can hit up my main show, which is the Joe Mays and JRAF show. Every Sunday evening, we talk about a variety of professional sports, usually focusing on the NFL. But if you're interested in my other takes on pop culture, movies, television, definitely hit up Tangents with Friends. I do that with my friends on an irregular basis, and I'm always looking for guests. So, you know, Steven, if you're ever interested in joining me on that, we can talk some stuff similar to the way the guys at IPC do.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be fun to be on. If we can, like, think of a great topic to talk about, I'd be totally down.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely try to work that out here in the future.
So, yeah, we've done this, like, little 80s nostalgia thing on Delayed Replay with like this and Top Gun Maverick and I guess also Wonder Woman 1984 earlier this year. But now next episode will be more of a 90s nostalgia thing, I guess, with the Candyman remake. I kind of wonder if like we're ever going to be ready for like a 90s renaissance, you know?
Sometimes I feel like, you know, a lot of people focus on the 80s and talk about the 80s, but I think the 90s has been brewing for a while, and I think that's something that's right around the corner. You know, we're 20 years removed from the final year of the 90s, so it's definitely coming up soon. And I think, honestly, there's aspects that have started now. I mean, really, the 90s have never left with the Jurassic Park franchise. Still going strong. Everyone's still linked up with that. And there's a lot of aspects of the 90s that remain in pop culture. And we're going to shift the spotlight to the 90s stuff here real soon, I think.
Yeah, there have been some things where there have been 90s nostalgia, like, shows and whatnot, but, like, maybe people weren't ready for them yet. It's kind of this theory I have. Like, back in 1999, there's that show Freaks and Geeks, which got canceled after one season. It takes place in the 80s, but like at that time, people were like really into that 70s show. So maybe we weren't like ready for an 80s show like that. And within the last few years, there's this Netflix show called Everything Sucks, which is set in the 90s. And I thought it was really good, but that got canceled as well. So I don't know, maybe we'll see like a 90s renaissance sometime this decade. We'll just have to wait and see.
I definitely think that's in the cards. I think that'll be coming sooner than later. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a significant movie franchise brought back or a television show set in that time period in the next 5 years.
We've had a period piece like Captain Marvel set in the 90s, which had some nostalgia, I guess, with like Blockbuster and whatnot. And Dark Phoenix was set in the 90s, but it did really focus on the 90s aspect, which was kind of weird, but also kind of refreshing. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. And like on the Candyman remake episode, I guess we on Delayed Replay will like talk about like 90s nostalgia as well, maybe. I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, if you want to find my stuff, you can follow me at Steven Schinder on Instagram and Twitter. Also, Steven Schinder Storytelling on Facebook. And you could go to stevenschinder.com to find info on my fantasy horror comedy novel, Lemons Will Make Rain, which is available on Amazon. And you can also follow Culture Slate on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. I've been helping with some memes and articles there. So it's entertainment, news, and memes, so check that out. Also go to cultureslate.com. And yeah, I'll put all these links in the show notes. And if you want to email the podcast, which I doubt since we haven't gotten like emails from listeners so far, but if you want to, email delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think of our coverage and of any of the movies and other things that we've talked about, and we might read your thoughts on the show. We are on Spotify, Apple, Google, although I'm not sure if Google Play is going to still be a thing as far as podcasts are concerned, but we'll see. Also YouTube, and you can also find us on channel 1138.com/delayed replay. All right, without further delay, have a good day.
Oh, weird. I'm getting a call from a number I don't recognize. Should I answer the call? Yeah, why not? Hello? Ah!
Do you know who I am?
Are you a ghost?
No. I'm sending this message via hologram. I am the master of the can of worms.
The can of worms? Oh my gosh, I remember them again. What are you all up to?
We've been listening to your podcast. I enjoyed the Ghostbusters Afterlife one, but I have questions.
What questions?
I am confused about the timeline of the movie regarding the ages of the Spangler family members.
Oh, I guess we kind of glossed over that, but they gloss over it in the movie as well. You know, there's a flux capacitor, so, you know, that car time traveled at some point, and that did some weird things with Spangler's family, and hence the ages and of like the kids and their parents and grandparents and all that. So, yeah, difficult to explain under pressure like this.
I have another question.
Okay.
What other crossovers can there be other than the possible one with Casper?
I don't know. I mean, I guess an easy one would be a crossover with some Sony property. So, I don't know, Pixels? You could have the Ghostbusters teaming up with Pac-Man against ghosts. And come to think of it, the characters in Pixels were kind of like Ghostbusters in how they acted and operated, but I mean, I don't know if the world is exactly clamoring for a crossover with an Adam Sandler movie, but Pixel was not bad like some of his other works. I definitely enjoyed it more than I thought I would, but it also had cringeworthy moments.
One last question for now.
Yeah?
Are you gonna be ready when we go after you?
I'd honestly rather you all stay away from here.
That is not an option. Be prepared, Steven Schinder.
Hello? Hello? Wait, what was I just talking about? I don't know. It'll come back to me eventually.